The city was dark. It had been dark for months. It was a dark time in a dark city, and a dark time was a time of great danger. Amid the Stygian gloom, it was not hard to imagine that the dark city was populated by an equally dark race, for the dark city was filled with shadows, and the shadows were filled with fear. A fear born of the knowledge that the dark city was on the verge of an outbreak, of a plague that would bring death to thousands, tens of thousands. A fear born of the knowledge that the dark city was on the brink of a revolution, of a social uprising that would leave hundreds, maybe thousands dead. A fear born of the knowledge that the dark city was on the verge of a terrible and irrevocable transformation. The dark city was Vega, the capital of the dominion of Walla, which lay on the very edge of the Jundland wastes. The darkness of Vega was both metaphorical and literal. The city lay deep within a canyon, surrounded by towering mountains of black basalt. The city's streets and buildings were cut from the same black stone. The buildings were tall, but not especially broad, and most were blocky and austere, without decoration or ornamentation. The streets were narrow, the buildings were tightly packed, and most were windowless. There were no lanterns, no lights. Only the glow of the eternal, pervasive darkness illuminated the city. The glow was soft and dim, barely perceptible, and yet it was never absent. The people of Vega lived in perpetual gloom. The darkness of Vega was also literal, though, as the people of Vega knew all too well. The people of Vega had always lived in darkness, and their fear of it had driven them to embrace a new light, the light of fate, the glorious radiance of the dominion of Walla's religion, which promised that all things could be changed through the application of divine will. The people of Vega had accepted the light of fate with great fervor, and they had made the new religion's first tenet a cornerstone of their society, that all men are created equal in the sight of the gods. This meant that the light of fate was not just a new religion, it was a new philosophy, a new way of life. They meant that men were no longer judged by the color of their skin or the shape of their eyes or the way they spoke, but only by the content of their character and their willingness to work for the good of all. It meant that no one was permitted to believe in his own superiority or in the inferiority of others. The light of fate was about equality and brotherhood and tolerance. It was about rejecting privilege and elitism and hatred. But Vega had long been a city of darkness, a city ruled by the powerful. The people of Vega had tolerated this rule because it had always been this way. And then, suddenly, it hadn't been this way. The darkness had given way to light, and the powerful had fallen from their lofty perches. Their temples and their palaces were closed. Their soldiers were dismissed from their posts. Their privileges were revoked. This was the beginning of the Dark City's transformation, a transformation that had come to a sudden and terrible end on that terrible night. That night, Vega had become a city of blood. "This is where it happened," said Jace Buluran. "This is where I came." The man standing beside him, a boy, really, looked up at the domed roof of the building and squinted. The light of Vega was faint and muted, even its rays couldn't pierce through the thick stone and glass. "It's a church," he said. "The Temple of Fate." "That's right," said Buluran. He reached out and rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. "This is where it happened." The boy, Vin, he told them to call him, was 12 years old. He was small for his age, with brown skin and a shock of red hair that covered most of his face. His eyes were wide and round and very blue. He looked more like a child than a boy. He was dressed in simple clothes, a loose pair of pants, a short-sleeved shirt with a collar, and a pair of boots. "You going to go up there?" asked Vin. He gestured up to the dome, his eyes wide with fright. "In there." "Yes," said Buluran. He smiled reassuringly and put an arm around the boy's shoulder. "I'll be careful, Vin. I'm not going to do anything foolish." "But," Vin stammered, "but what if it's all gone?" Buluran nodded thoughtfully. "It may be," he said, "but we'll see." He took a deep breath and looked at Kelsier and Elend Venture. Elend was standing nearby, wearing simple clothes as well, though his were decidedly finer than Vin's, and holding a pair of black lacquer metal tubes in his hands. They were each half as long as he was tall, but tapered to sharp points at both ends. Each tube was inlaid with a swirl of polished red metal. "I don't like this," muttered Kelsier. "We'll be careful," said Elend. "Vin, why don't you wait here? We'll go up there alone and check it out." "I'll be right here," said Vin. backing away from Belarusian. He moved toward one of the nearby alleyways, disappearing in its darkness as Kelsia, Eland, and Belarusian started for the street leading up to the temple's entrance. Kelsia wasn't sure. He believed Vin's claim that this was where the church had happened. It seemed too obvious a location for a murder that would start a revolution, especially given how the people of Vega would react to such a thing. The Lord Ruler's armies had done a thorough job of removing any evidence of the church's existence, not just killing people associated with it but burning its buildings to ash.